Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Last Honest Realtor. I am your host, David Fleming. Thank you so much for joining me today as we explore a topic that I think, at least from the headline, many of you will be interested in. And I've been toying with this for a while now, trying to decide exactly how to come at it. Essentially, the question is, why do some properties sell and others don't? Very basic question. But the answer is very complicated. I'm going to take you down a trail of breadcrumbs, if you will, to get you to what I believe wholeheartedly is the answer. Now, I believe this from a business standpoint. I'm not a spiritual guy, but I'll say I believe this in my heart and in my soul. And I believe that really what it comes down to in the end is the way that it's listed and by whom. Now, that's a very simplistic answer. Who's listing the property? Give me a little bit of leeway here. Because at the end of the day, a property selling versus a property not selling, well, it could be the condition. But again, I would say, well, the person that's listing it, why did they decide to list it that way? It could be the price. Hey, the reason this sold is because of the price. The reason this didn't sell is because of the price. But again, whose decision was that? Now, you might say that was a seller's decision. Absolutely. But what did the listing agent advise them? So in kind of toying with the title, we came up with Property Fails. Why some Toronto listings go nowhere and what it says about the market. What does it say about the market? It says that the market can be manipulated. And that is very, very interesting. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. So the Toronto market has a reputation for being red hot. Why do some properties sell and others don't? Toronto market can have peaks and valleys, as we've experienced over the last little while. Again, some of the great properties, they don't sell. Some of them are listed over and over again. That's something that we've seen over the last couple of years. So essentially, I think there are three reasons, if you will. One is marketing and representation. The second is the agent, specifically the agent. And the third is the pricing and listing strategy. So last year, we spent a lot of time and did a lot of different podcasts talking about pricing and listing strategy. So I don't want to go over that, so to speak, today. But if you recall a podcast I did where the entire podcast was based on one listing, one property rather, that had been listed, I think something like 25 times over 2 years with 7 different offer dates. Again, why is that not selling? You could say it comes down to price, but the point I'm going to make today is that it comes down to representation. So I want to go off on a wild tangent. Might have lost a couple of you there. No, seriously, this is going to be a fun one. I don't read. I don't have a lot of time to do so. I wish I did. But I downloaded this app. It's called Blinkst, and I don't want to turn this into advertisement for the app. But essentially what it does is it boils down an entire book into digestible 30 minutes. So I'm running. I ran the other night. It was minus 15. Boy, that was exhilarating. And I'm listening to these blinks, as they're called. And my whole thing is, hey, if it's really, really interesting, I might read the entire book. Now, the book that I listened to was Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And again, this is a bit of a tangent, but it's going to prove my thesis today. The book is basically about finding why you do something, a business, a product. It's saying that the iPhone, okay, that's the product, but why? Why does Apple do what they do? And it essentially surmises that people aren't buying what you're selling. They're buying why you're selling it. They're buying the story behind it. And I'm running and I'm thinking, okay, well, this is interesting, because I believe there's a right way to sell real estate. I think in a hot market, you can get way beyond top dollar. You can get multiple offers. You can get absolutely crazy amounts of bids and people. And in a cold market, the right way is still to get it sold. You're going to get it sold faster. You're going to get it sold for a better than average price. You're going to get it sold at all compared to the ones that aren't selling. So I understand the why part of this book. Why do you do what you do? And I think about myself and why I do what I do. And if you're following me here, I really do believe that with 72,000 agents in the business, the right way of doing things, based on why agents do what they do, is going to come out in the end and tell us why some properties sell and why some properties don't. So from the book, this is a quote. Even though the why should be at the very center of every company, most founders and leaders don't have a clue what their why is. They can tell you exactly what they do and why they do it, sure. But if you ask them why their company exists, a lot of them struggle to answer. They might mumble something about always wanting to start a company, or just admit that they're in it for the money, or something about making the world a better place. Finding your purpose in life or your company's purpose isn't easy. Here's a good piece of advice. And for those of you listening or watching, I encourage you, pay very close attention to this and take this little test. If you want to find your purpose, investigate your past and try to find patterns there. Ask yourself, what were you known for? How did friends, family, and coworkers perceive you? What did they notice that made you special? Often the key to your purpose lies there. Now, I'm the last person that believes in, this self-motivational kind of stuff. But this really resonated with me because I remember I was out on a run and I listened to this and I paused it and I thought, okay, I'll take this exercise. And so a little bit about me. This book is telling you to look at your past. What were you known for? What did people say about you? I mean, whether it was early childhood or high school, people thought that I worked too hard and that I was too consumed with grades and getting the best grade and doing the best project. And honestly, it didn't matter what it was. I wanted to do the best. I played soccer. I played hockey. I wanted to be the absolute best. I want to be the team captain. I want to lead the league in scoring. And again, I'm not saying this like this is the path. This is not necessarily what everybody should do. That is just what I did. And I remember one specific instance where we were in, there was a class called study. Some of you will remember. It was like the spare in high school in the timetable. A bunch of kids sitting around. One kid said, let's see how many U.S. presidents we can name. Started writing them up on the board. They got Lincoln, right? They got Washington. And then the bell rang. So I went home that night. And because I was who I was, you can call me a nerd, I decided to memorize all of the 42 presidents at the time. And there was no internet, so I had to put in a CD-ROM. I'm really dating myself. But that's the way that I was. I was made fun of for trying to do too much. That was just it. And no matter what it was, my hobbies, I collected autographs, I collected hockey cards. I didn't just want to collect autographs. I wanted to know which hotel the players were staying at so that I could go there and stake it out because I was really cool in high school. So anyways, that's a long tangent about myself, and you may or may not find that interesting. But the book itself, asking you to go back and identify patterns, that was an interesting way of sort of finding my why. So this is what I came up with. I want to be the best at what I do because I don't know any other way of doing things. I want to sell a house for the highest price. I want to make the client the happiest, show the house the best, get the most showings, the most offers, and have people talk about it. I want to solve all my sellers' problems. I want to calm their nerves. I want to take their hard and I want to make it easy. I want to put my buyers in the best house in the best area, tell them why they should live there. I look at these particular buyers that I told, don't look in the beaches. I'll get you into Leaside. You're going to love your lives there. And I sold them a house and I can see the next 20 years of their lives, how they live, their kids going to school, their hobbies, their friends, where he goes cycling, where she walks for coffee, because I know what they don't. That's based on my experience, knowledge, drive, passion, but it stems from wanting to be the best and thus do the best for them. So again, don't want to sound too existential, spiritual, salesy, if you will, but listening to this book, Sign of the Times, it made me look at my why, and then it made me look at my business model. And of course, far be it for me to say that I think my business model is right, but we consistently sell properties and we consistently sell them in the best way possible. And I firmly believe that the reason some properties sell and the reason that others don't, it stems from who's listing it. Of course, it stems from the seller. The seller says they want too much money. Oh, it's their problem. But make it your own problem. That's what I would say. Make it my fault. I didn't have the guts to tell them they're wrong. Make it the agent's fault. So a few years ago, I interacted with another agent, very big listing agent, does a ton of volume. And we compared and contrasted our business models. He told me that he has 3 tenets. Number 1 is to get the listing for the highest commission. Number 2 is to get the listing for the lowest price. And number 3 is to get the longest listing contract possible. Now let's review. Get it for the highest commission. So full disclosure here, guys, I have one business model. It's the same commission across the board for everybody. I do the same thing for everybody. If somebody says, David, I don't need to move my stuff out and I don't need to stage and I don't need to do all those wonderful things, we don't work together. It's very simple. I believe wholeheartedly in what I do. Now, this agent says I get the highest commission possible. I start at 5. Hey, if it's 4.5, fine. If it's 4, all right. If it's 3.5, I'll find a way to make it work. Then he says, I get it for the lowest price possible. Now, this is An agent in an area where there are a lot of secondhand and third-hand listings. So the first agent has the house at $5 million. That's 6 months. The second agent has the house for 4 months at $4.5 million. And he just comes in and says, it's 3.8. They say I want 4.2 and they settle at 4 million. Right off the bat, you're negotiating against the agent that's supposed to be getting you the most money. I don't know why anyone would like this business model, but regardless. And the third point is the longest contract possible. So when I went in and showed one of these properties, there was nothing in the house. There was no staging. Brand new house. Some of the light bulbs didn't work. There were leaves, which is odd because, fall was many months ago. It hadn't been cleaned. And in the drawer of the kitchen were feature sheets from 2 agents ago. Now that is one business model. And again, very successful agent does a ton of business. But are you getting the most money? And is the house selling? Why some houses sell and why others don't. So I want to go back to the book for a moment, the Simon Sinek book, Finding Your Why. And I want to use the example of Dell versus Apple. So I'm not sure if you know this, but believe it or not, Dell made an MP3 player when Apple did. But Apple went on to become, the iPod and the iPhone and the everything, and Dell's back to making computers. So the book basically says, think about the MP3 player. If Dell made a player, like most other companies, it would start with the what and move on to the how. They'd say this, hey, we made another MP3 player with 25 gigabytes of internal storage designed by top-notch engineers focused on user-friendliness. Check them out. So first they mention the what. It's an MP3 player with 25 gigabytes of storage. Then comes the how. Designed by top-notch engineers. Then they're going to get to the why. Did they? Did they get to the why? Here's what Apple does. Apple starts with the why. We want to revolutionize how music is distributed and consumed. Wow. Okay. Well, how? We made a device that can store 1,000 songs and fits in your pocket. Okay. All right. And then comes the what. There isn't one. There isn't one. Amazing. Because they don't need to tell you what it is, because you're already interested. They wanted to revolutionize how music's distributed and consumed. Okay. They made a device that can store 1,000 songs and fits in your pocket. Now that might be the what, but that's actually the how. That's how they're revolutionizing it. And that, as the book says, is what's so brilliant about what they do. And from there, you decide, that sounds great, I'm going to buy one. So I'm going to draw this back to real estate because I believe that it all starts from the why. And I've told you about, my somewhat pathetic teenage years trying to be the best and get the best grades and yada, yada, yada. But that is who I am. And that is who a lot of very successful agents are. That is how they model themselves. They are uniquely, intrinsically driven to do the best job possible. And then there's just a lot of other agents that don't care. Now, I gave you the example of the other agent I know who says, I want the highest commission with the cheapest price with the longest contract. That's a business. That's a business model. But it's being driven by something else, which with all due respect, people get into real estate for money. And that seems to be the business model that is. I believe, naively or otherwise, that you will make an exceptional living if you are an exceptional agent at getting exceptional prices and delivering exceptional service. So to me, it all starts from the beginning. We do not believe that properties sell themselves. They just don't. The sign on the lawn, the listing on MLS, and that is what a lot of folks think. So again, I understand different strokes for different folks. Many people don't believe in the value of a real estate agent. And, we typically don't work with those folks. We work with people that want to work with us because they believe in our process and what we do. Now, we believe in doing things right. We believe in doing things a certain way. We believe in doing things and starting from absolute scratch. And that, to me, is the very beginning of why properties sell and why properties don't. Trace it back to the origin. So I want to give you an example. And I'm going to take this from a blog post that I wrote for TRG. We actually have a blog on Toronto Realty Group as opposed to Toronto Realty Blog. So let's say that 2 neighbors who live across the street from one another are listing their homes in the spring. Now, the first neighbor makes her decision in December or January and works towards the spring. The second neighbor makes his decision in March and decides to list immediately. The first neighbor takes stock of her home in the winter and decides that in order to maximize her potential sale price, she's going to do some work on the home. The second neighbor believes a house sells itself in this market. It doesn't plan to do anything to the house, save for take some photos and put it up for sale. The first neighbor begins her preparation by heading to Home Depot and buying a lot of cardboard boxes and plastic totes. She rents a storage locker, begins to fill her boxes and bins with all the wares she's accumulated over the years, but that she doesn't need on a daily basis. These items are taking up a lot of space in the home, and her goal is to declutter so that she can make the home look more spacious and allow for a professional stager to add a designer look and feel to the home. The second neighbor continues to purchase wares on Amazon and have packages delivered daily, as does much of the world, but he thinks nothing of the sheer amount of stuff and things in his home and believes that buyers will look past any of his personal effects. The first neighbor, after removing about 80% of the items in her home, then decides to add a fresh coat of paint to most of the rooms in the home, as well as update some of the older yellowing light fixtures with something more modern and stylish. She was told by her real estate agent that painting and lighting are two of the most impactful investments that she will make when preparing for a home for sale. Cheap and cheerful, her stager said. The second neighbor thinks nothing of the old rusty paint cans stacked to the ceiling in the basement furnace room, but he does change a couple of light bulbs, so that's something. The first neighbor, after decluttering, painting, and adding some more light to the home, decides to conduct some very minor repairs around the home. She finally replaces the broken side door, which has been on her to-do list for years. She re-drywalls a hole in the living room that was caused by a falling shelf. She recocks all the sinks, bathtubs, and showers in the house as they've been moldy for longer than she wants to admit, and then she checks off another half dozen items on her punch list. The second neighbor accidentally cracks a kitchen floor tile one day when he drops his panini press, but he decides to purchase one of those thick kitchen mats and simply cover up the damage. Nobody will know, and if they find out, it'll be after the house is sold, and well, it's their problem. The first neighbor, after decluttering, packing, moving items to storage, painting, adding lighting, doing minor repairs, hires a deep cleaning team to do a thorough, top-to-bottom overhaul of the house the day she moves out of the home in order to have the property staged. The second neighbor has a cleaning lady that comes once per month, but that probably won't coincide with his listing. He won't leave dirty dishes in the sink or anything, but again, he expects buyers will be smart enough to look at the home and the location and not care about the condition of his hardwood flooring or the cleanliness of the kitchen counter. The first neighbor is delighted to see the photos and video of her fully staged home as she stays with friends for 1 week that her agent chooses to expose the property to the market before the scheduled offer date. The second neighbor lists his house for sale with a photos coming soon on the MLS listing because he didn't have his pictures in time. And since he often works from home, he chooses to simply step outside for a bit when buyers come to view the property with their agent. So, which property do you think is going to do better on the market? This is the point that I'm trying to make. And time again, I remain amazed by people who take chances with the sale of their largest asset. There is a right way to list and sell real estate, and then there is every other way. And unfortunately, we see the latter play out in today's market more often than not. So while I was reading that, I was thinking of a situation I had, and this is a true story. In early December, a property came up for sale on a Friday. That's odd, especially in this area and price point. And I rushed my buyers in to see it. We absolutely loved it. We felt that it was priced, I'll be fully transparent, it was $3 million. And we felt that this was like a 3.2, 3.3 home. What happened next was amazing. This was listed by, I don't want to say a discount firm, but you wouldn't expect that somebody with a $3 million listing would list with one of these sort of virtual brokerages. Now, in speaking to the agent, who seemed very unprepared to take my call, he admitted that the listing was supposed to come out on Monday, and that it came out in MLS on Friday. That is such a monumental F-up, I can't wrap my head around it. So he didn't really even know that it was going up, and he said that their office administrator was trying to get ahead on her workload. Imagine thinking your property is going up on Monday and it comes up on Friday. True story. Now, when we went there was no sign on the lawn. You might say, oh, well, it's just a sign on the lawn. It's literally the first thing you see when you walk up. When we went there was somebody servicing the furnace and the air conditioner. And when we went back the next morning for a second viewing, the doorbell rings, and there's a gentleman with a ladder, and he says, hey, because he thinks we're the homeowners, I'm here to clean the eaves troughs. We sat in the living room and my clients were confused because they'd seen a lot of houses that were listed in a very good way. And this one seemed to be an absolute mess. Folks, I know this is hard to believe, but this listing was not supposed to come out this day. It was not prepared. The house itself had not been cleaned. It was also not staged. As I mentioned, there was no for sale sign on the lawn, and they had multiple people there working on the house. And this was Friday at 5 o'clock. Now, my clients bought the house. It was $3 million. And again, you might say, well, David, you're saying this could have been 3.2, it could have been 3.3, call that a wash. It's not a wash. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars. My point is this: there is an arbitrage opportunity in real estate. Some people think that every single property in the city of Toronto is just worth what it's worth. And you know what? It's going to sell for what it's going to sell for in any market. I wholeheartedly disagree. Now, here's another analogy. Let's say you have a share of stock. It's trading at $100. Now, it could trade for $100.20 or $99.80. Point being, it's trading for what it's trading for. Now, there are millions and millions of shares of this, and they're virtual, essentially. We don't have stock certificates anymore. This is not like a physical house. This is just a share of stock. Now, let's say that you were to, sell it for $130. Put in a limit order for $130. It's not going to sell for that because that day, 3 million shares sold for around $100, give or take. No one's going to buy your shares for $130. But what if they did? What if they did? And that is my point about the real estate market. Real estate has no fixed value. You can manipulate or incentivize the market and its participants to pay more, or in some cases pay less for a property. That is why some properties sell and some properties don't. Now, one more story. My 40th birthday was great. I thought I was going to play golf, and a van rolled up, and it was all my buddies. They got me by surprise. Very cool. One of my favorite memories. Now, we ended up going to my brother's cottage. We were sitting around having lunch, and a friend of mine started talking about real estate agents, and in a nice way. And he was basically saying, look, the only real job is to tell me what my house is worth. And he's going on about, AI can do that. And I'm like, oh, here we go, right? I know some of you believe the Uberization of real estate's coming. And I let him go and I let him talk. He's like, you tell me what my house is worth. He tells me what my house is worth. That person tells me what my house is worth. That's the job. I said to him, okay, I'll tell you what. Your house is worth $1 million. He said, sure. That agent said it's worth $1 million. That agent said it's worth $1 million. I'm saying it's worth $1 million. He goes, yeah. Exactly. And everyone's waiting for the hook. And I said, I'll get you 1.1 million. And there was a long pause, and you could see sort of the hamster spin on the wheel in his head. And then he smiled, and then the buddy started laughing, and he realized, yeah, that's the difference. So that is the truth of it. You've got $1 million house. Some agents can get you 1.1. Some agents can get you 950. Some agents will sell it, whereas some agents won't. And there are so many facets that go into this, but having given you all kinds of examples today, my 40th birthday, trading shares of stock, Apple versus Dell, a book by Simon Sinek, let's now delve into what I think should be the process and how some properties sell and sell for top dollar and how some properties don't. As I mentioned, a property doesn't sell itself. You have a property that is tenanted. There are no photos. There's no staging. It looks like crap. Then you have the same property, one level up, that is beautiful. And it is staged and it is clean. And there are fresh flowers that are making the unit smell well. And you have the best marketing. You have the best photos. You might tell me that you're the buyer and you're not going to distinguish between the two identical units. I am telling you based on 20 years of experience, people do. It's all about preparation, timing, pricing, staging, marketing. Now the preparation, way in advance. I cannot tell you how many times we work with people 3, 4, 5, 6 months in advance. And as I gave you that example earlier of the fictional characters and the guy that says, yep, I'm ready to sell, let's do it, versus the person that spends months in advance, that is the first place where people go wrong, is not preparing. So think about this. You want to run a half marathon. I wanted to run a half marathon. I had absolutely no experience. I just started running. I probably could have joined a club. I could have hired a coach. I just started running. And I ran and I did my routes. And in the end, I hurt my knee because I was overtraining, because I was running 16 kilometers every Sunday in preparation for a 21-kilometer race. My point is, I don't know anything about running. What in the hell made me think that I was going to train myself for a half marathon? It's the same thing with real estate. I'm not making this into an advertisement for why to hire a real estate agent, but if you sell a property once every 15 years and you have a real estate agent that sells 80 properties a year, maybe I should have hired a running coach. So, cleaning, repairs, painting, decluttering, packing, moving, storing, staging. It sounds pretty simple, but most people don't do it. You take your house, whoever you are, look around. You've been there for how long? How much stuff and things do you have in this home? Now, part of the issue of doing the things that I've just mentioned is a lot of people don't know how, or they don't have the resources to do it. Again, not to turn this into an advertisement for what we do, I have a bathtub glazer in my Rolodex. If someone needs a bathtub glazed, I have a person that can do it. Now, out there right now, there are going to be agents that are running around saying, does anyone know someone that can? Does anyone have a person that can? Your real estate Rolodex, it's worthwhile. Having somebody to do everything. So when you've got a property that's coming up for sale and say it's a house, a lot of people think, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a pre-home inspection. That's good marketing. Now, again, many people don't do a pre-home inspection. That's suicide in the real estate market as far as I'm concerned. But let's say you do a pre-home inspection. You're good. You're a good agent. Put it on the table. It's good marketing. Why not go one step further? Why not have that inspection done 6 weeks before the listing so you can figure out everything that's wrong? Guys, we had a listing that was coming to market. We did a pre-home inspection, and guess what they found? Knob and tube wiring. Okay, no problem. Let's just put it on the market. No, we're not doing that. We can't do that. Now, that's what most agents would do. That would bother me. That would bother me to see this house put up with knob and tube wiring, because you know what you could do? You could have an electrician come in and take it all out. Now, again, if you go to one of the big knob and tube companies, they're months in advance. If you're a real estate agent that is experienced and has contacts, you're getting a favor from your electrician, to whom you refer a lot of business, to get in within 48 hours. They're going to rip all the knob and tube out. Okay, there's holes in the walls. No problem. We can drywall that. The walls are made of plaster. No problem. You've got one of the very few guys in the city of Toronto that does plaster. Then you've got a painter to come through, and you're pushing the listing back a week. And the clients who have moved out because you told them to move out because you're good at what you do, they have to rent the Airbnb for another week. But in the end, you've pushed the listing back 1 week. And guess what? A house with knob and tube wiring, not good. A house with zero knob and tube wiring, okay. So what's the difference there? Costs you a couple $1,000s to do all that work and to extend the Airbnb. It could potentially make you $100,000 plus, because the two buyers that don't want to buy the house because it has knob and tube wiring, they pull out of the 5 offers that are on the table on offer night. Now you've got 3. It's $100,000. So this is what I'm talking about from a preparation standpoint. It starts with the prep. Somebody says, we're going to sell our house. Great. Let's take a look at it. What's wrong with this house? What can we do to improve the value? And guys, I'm going in about an hour and a half to meet clients of mine that are thinking about maybe selling in April and May. And they've said, David, will you please come to the property and give us an idea of what we can do in terms of capital improvements? Guys, it's a tax-free capital gain. Any money that you put into your house, tax-free, whatever you put in, $5,000 to renovate this bathroom, or $10,000 in random repairs around the house. And then it gets me another $80,000 because of all the buyers that were interested in the house, because of the things that I did. That is a tax-free capital gain. These folks have asked me to come through. We're going to take a look. I'll put a plan together. I've got a listing coming out in Leslieville they just bought last night, so a couple of weeks. I was in their house last summer, and I gave them this massive to-do list. I was like, listen, I know you're not going to do all of this, but in a perfect world, they did every single thing. You've got to prepare in advance. And time again, I see properties that are thrown onto the market and they're not ready, and it bothers me to no end. So I mentioned this: cleaning, repairs, painting, decluttering, packing, moving, storing, staging. How many storage facilities are in the city of Toronto? How many of these have vacancies? Do you know what it costs to rent one of these things? How much is a plastic tote? Go and buy plastic totes and take everything in your house and fill it up and get it the heck out of there. A lot of agents don't do this. I don't understand it. I don't understand why an agent would walk into a house and either not know to tell someone to do this, or they tell them to do it and that person says, I don't want to do it, and the agent backs down because their heart's not in it. They don't believe in the process. They don't believe in what they're doing. So when it comes to pricing, you can't just pick a price. I want 1.6 for my house. How many agents say, okay. Now, again, being the nerd that I am, I love data. I love making spreadsheets. So when the market was rough last year, in preparation of a particular listing, I spent weeks compiling all of this data and putting it in a shared spreadsheet with the clients to show them what's happening in the market. Now, it's not that I was trying to, work them down off of a price that they wanted, or again, sorry, my mind always goes to what would the counter argument be. I was trying to provide them with knowledge. And there are so many agents that just don't do this. You walk into a house, this could be 1.3, 1.4. Seller says, we were really hoping for 1.5, 1.6. And the agent says, yeah, okay. You can't do it. This is why properties sit. This is why properties don't sell. There's an honesty and a transparency that is not present in this market. And again, you go back to different business models. There are agents whose business model is get the listing first and foremost. Doesn't matter what the price is. Get as long as you can get it for, and then slowly work on price reductions until you get it down. When I put together this spreadsheet last year for my clients, and back then it was more about offer nights, because this was in June of 2024, I showed them that 3 weeks before their listing, only 25% of offer nights were working. The other 75% of offer nights sailed through, and those properties were relisted at higher prices, or they languished on the market in that sort of in between where you're priced at $999 with an offer date for the house you think is worth 1.3, and nobody shows it because they don't know what you're relisting at. Now the next week dropped down to about 20% of offer nights working, and the next week it was down to about 15%. I'd given them the data they needed. This is hard data. You can't dispute this. Now, there are some sellers that would say, we don't care what that says. The offer date, it's going to work. There's buyers out there. And again, I'm saying this based on personalities that I've met. There's a willful ignorance among a lot of sellers, and it's based on an entitlement, a naivety. But there are people out there that if you said, hey, the offer dates aren't working, they say, ours is going to work. You've got to get out in advance of that. As an agent, you've got to be transparent and honest with those clients. So I've got a couple of properties in the market right now, and every night I update our shared spreadsheet because you've got to empower the seller with the market data. If you're a seller and you're rational and you're logical, and you look at the 50 listings that are on this and you see that 2 have sold, you understand the market. So this brings me to another point, and this is a really tough one for both seller and agent. It is the being honest with each other point. It's not unreasonable to think that some sellers want more for their home than it's worth, or some sellers expect to get more or think it's worth more. Does the agent have the guts, if you will, to tell the seller that they're wrong? This is where so many listings go wrong. A seller says, my house is worth $2 million. The agent, they did their homework and they're like, this house is worth 1.7. Does that agent have the guts to say, I'm really sorry, but it's not worth $2 million? Now, do they have the skill and the data analysis and the presentation ability to demonstrate that to the seller? First and foremost, they may not. But even if they do, will they? Too many agents in this industry will list properties for prices that have absolutely no hope of being achieved. And again, I put that on the agent. So remember, when we started this, and I had said some properties sell, some properties don't. And I said, you can blame the agent for everything. Now, if the seller wants too much money, blame the seller. No, it's the agent for not standing up to them. If the seller says, I don't believe in staging, blame the seller. No, blame the agent for not demonstrating why it is so important. So from a data standpoint, I think it is crucial. And I think that so few sellers understand it and so few agents are able to demonstrate it. Now, again, you go back to this idea of offer date versus not offer date. Where so many properties go wrong, the listing strategies, the agents that employ them or the sellers that want them, is simply not understanding the market and its conditions. So I go back to the example I gave you of last June, where I'm tracking offer dates and I'm showing the percentage of offer dates that work versus those that don't. For that data to be out there and misread, it's just unacceptable. You're a seller. Your agent says 10% of offer dates are working. And you say, okay, yeah, let's do it. Let's do an offer date. The property's not going to sell. It's going to be relisted. Relisting Once upon a time, it was a real estate kiss of death. Now, well, sometimes baked into a strategy. But again, we're talking about preparation. We're talking about data. We're talking about pricing. We're talking now about strategy. Part of the reason why properties in the city of Toronto don't sell is the intersection between the strategy and the pricing. To offer date or not to offer date. Now, in a red hot market, the A's, B's, C's, and sometimes D's will sell on the offer nights. In a lukewarm market, the A's and the B's, they'll sell on the offer nights. In a poor market, it's really the A pluses and the A's. Sometimes even the A minus houses will not get the natural lift to sell on an offer date. So lift, not exactly an economic term. Say you have a $999 listing. Can you get to 1.2? Can you get 200,000 of lift? Or working backwards. Hey, I've got this house. I think it's worth 1.4. What should I price it at? Do you want to price it at 1,099? I don't know if I can get 300,000 of lift. So from a strategy standpoint, this is where so many agents go wrong. So many sellers get it wrong. And again, I always say, whether it's to myself in the mirror or to my team, find a way to blame yourself, find a way to blame the agent. The seller wants to enact a strategy that's dead on arrival. Will the agent have the guts to tell them, hey, this isn't going to work? Now, from a presentation standpoint, there are good photographers, there are bad photographers. I cannot believe that I even have to say this, but it's probably not a good idea for the agent to take photos on their iPhone. It happens all the time. Now, on my blog, over the years, I have shown some of the biggest photography fails. Imagine that you have a PDF on your computer. You could probably turn that PDF into a JPEG, right? And then upload that photo to MLS. One of the most hysterical photos I've ever seen on an MLS listing is where an agent on their computer took a photo of their computer screen. Jonathan's laughing off camera. It's a true story. Took a photo of their computer screen and then used those photos for MLS. And the reason I could see this was because all of the icons across the top and bottom of the screen, right? Your desktop and all your little icons and then the top frame of your Google Chrome, you could see it in the photo. That person has a real estate license. Someone hired that person. Chicken and the egg. Would that person be in business if someone didn't hire them, right? Or did that person hire them because they're in the business? Guys, I can't believe I even have to say this. It's like telling your kids like, hey, Billy, you shouldn't step in front of that moving tractor. Yeah, but maybe you do. So there's good photographers and bad photographers. What am I supposed to say here? I think it's a good idea for you to hire a very good photographer. I actually have to say that. I think it's a good idea for you to have custom floor plans done. I think it's a good idea for you to have a 3D Matterport tour and a virtual tour and a slideshow of photos. And on MLS where you get 40 photos, you should actually use all 40 spaces and not just have 10. I think to put photos coming soon is absolutely insane. I think you should have social media. You should have a YouTube reel. You should have an Instagram reel. I can't believe that I have to say this, but I do because so few people do it. Now, marketing, it's a thing. It's been around for a while and it works. So we have a project in Port Credit called the Lake House. And every weekend we have 6 to 10 groups come through. How'd you hear about it? We saw it on social media. You mean marketing works? Yes, it does. And there are agents out there that don't spend any money on marketing. Why are you hiring a real estate agent when they won't spend money on marketing? Again, I don't want to talk about myself and what we do, but in trying to talk about what you should not do, maybe I'm going to have to talk about what we do. When people come through the Lake House and they say, yeah, we saw it on social media, we saw it on Instagram. Okay, I feel good. Our ads are working. This is not rocket science. You should have great photos. You should have great virtual tours. You should have a virtual tour. When I click on the MLS listing and look for the floor plans and there aren't any, what? Why are there no floor plans? This is insane to me. And yet this is at least 50 to 60% of every single listing on MLS. I cannot believe I have to talk about marketing. Now, to take a step back here, I have a listing where I said to the seller, you've got to paint. The seller said, I don't want to spend the money. And I said, okay, well, I think you need to. And if we're going to be staging the place, the lipstick on a pig, you're going to stage a place that isn't painted. And the seller said, look, I think one of the most exciting things for any first-time buyer is to go in and give the place a fresh coat of paint. And I think that every buyer is obviously going to realize that that's something that they need to do. Therefore, I'm not going to paint it. How many agents right there would have backed down and said, yep, no problem? I didn't in this situation. I said, you have to paint this place. And I'm not going to say that I would have walked away from the listing if this guy didn't paint the place. And again, I talked earlier about the fact that we have a bathtub glazer, or the fact that there are people in this building that are running around asking who knows somebody that can. A good real estate agent has a Rolodex, and we have a Rolodex. And I can tell you that if you call Craigslist guy and he says it's $4,000, I have a painter that'll probably do it for $1,800 because my painter's honest and hardworking and fast and experienced. So fast, I can't even tell you. And that part of what I pride myself on is having access to said bathtub glazer and everybody else. So at the end of the day, the seller said, okay, fine. Yeah, I'll pay to paint it. And this seller happens to be in England. And so, of course, I facilitated the entire thing because that is part of what I do. I'm not paying for it, right? This property was tenanted for 6 years and the tenants beat the hell out of the place. It's not up to me, but it is up to me to go to the unit and see and advise, and then line up the painter and then facilitate it. Happy to. That's my job. But how many agents don't do this? How many agents wouldn't know to paint it, wouldn't demand that it's painted, wouldn't have someone to refer, and then when push comes to shove, wouldn't back down off of that? I just don't understand. So again, take a couple of steps back now because we're moving forward at a very, very fast rate. Are you going to live in the house when it's for sale? Oh, it's fine. Honestly, I'll just get up. I'll go for a walk around the block. No, not happening. But people do this time and time again. Half of the listings in the city of Toronto, you go for your appointment and the seller's home. I just think it's crazy. And when people say to me, I really don't think it matters if I'm there, I say this. You are going, that's how old I am, to a mall, and you're shopping for a swimsuit. You get a swimsuit off the rack, and then you go to try it on. Do you want someone to come in that room with you? Hey, you want to try that on? Okay, let me get a key. Come on in. Listen, you're not going to feel comfortable doing that. And you sure as hell are not going to feel comfortable looking at a house when the sellers are home. But so often the sellers are home. So often the sellers aren't moved out. And I know it's a lot to ask for somebody to move out. And this is sort of what happened during COVID is we started saying the sellers should move out. But what I've learned over the last 4 or 5 years since COVID started is that that was actually a blessing. Because if you've got a hot listing and you're going to put it up on a Tuesday and take offers the following Monday, you might have 50 showings. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with your kids? Are you going to say to your agent, listen, we have kids and they go to bed, so no showings after 7 o'clock? Absolutely not. You're going to lose showings. But there are agents out there that say, okay, it comes back to the agent. You're not getting showings on the house because there's no showings after 7 because your clients want to put the kids to bed because you allowed it to happen. There's just a lot of agents out there, don't know, don't care. Their heart's not in it. That's why that book really spoke to me. So the last point, and this is where it gets tough to explain, the intangibles, is the agent that's representing it. I want to give you an example, and I've told this before on my blog and in my podcast. There was once a house that had 30 offers, and 30 offers is a lot. It would take a long time to make 30 phone calls. But what do we do for a living? What do we get paid for? Why do people hire us? Because we work hard? Yeah, theoretically at least. Now, the agent in question, one of the big billboard bus stop people, had this listing with 30 offers, 0 communication on the phone, wouldn't answer the phone, couldn't get through at the office, absolutely 0. You've got a question about inclusions and exclusions, you've got a question about rental items, you've got a question about offer process, nothing, nada. Everything was done through email. So the offers all go in, and I remember submitting this offer, this is for Ronsi's house, and an hour later you get an email. It doesn't even say like, dear colleagues. It just says, if you have an offer on such and such property, revise your offer, send updated offer by, 8:30. No. I talked to my clients. I was like, guys, I don't like this. I have no idea what's going on. I don't trust this agent. I don't trust this process. I don't trust how many offers there are. This is a disgusting mess. And we walked. We walked because of the person representing it and the way that that person was doing business. So I had a couple listings last year that had over 20 offers. No problem. I tell my wife, honey, I have offers tonight. I'm not going to be home till later. Offers are at 6:00. Guess what? I pick up the phone. I start calling. How long does it take to make a phone call? Hey, Jenny, thanks so much for your offer. It is a little bit low. We have offers significantly ahead. Just giving you the opportunity. If you wanted to do something on it, no pressure. You don't have to. Okay, thanks, Jenny. Goodbye. Click. Next. I am telling you, the agent can make all the difference. How are you running your offer night? Or, God forbid, there is no offer night, you're in a slow market. Are you calling the agent to thank them for booking? Are you calling the agent to say, is there anything I can do to help you with your viewing? Can I send you the home inspection, the floor plans? Are you calling them after the fact? The name on the listing, and I know it's an intangible and maybe you don't want to hear this, the name on the listing is so important. And again, I'm going to tell you this to toot my own horn, but you can extrapolate this across the industry. Once in a while, I'll have somebody call me and they'll say, hey, I see you've got the listing on such and such street. I've got a client that's interested. Oh, I was so happy to see your name. I'd love to work with you. Why wouldn't that be expected? As opposed to the no-name agent does a couple listings a year if they're lucky from a fly-by-night brokerage and you see that name. Okay. And again, it's not judging a book by its cover. It's based on experience. There are times, so I sold a place last night. I know the agent. This agent's been in the business forever. This agent's son was on a baseball team that when I coached baseball, I coached against. So I don't know if a lot of you guys know this. Matthew, who works on my team, who's now 32 years old, I was his baseball coach when he was 15 years old. And on the other teams were a couple of boys whose parents happen to be real estate agents. There's a relationship there. And I did this deal last night because when we walked into the house and my clients walked upstairs, the first thing I did was sit and talk to the agent about our kids. There's a relationship involved in real estate. People who say that it's a virtual business, that we don't need agents, this deal was done because of the relationship. I don't think there's a counter argument to that. It's a people business. There's people that you know. There's people that you trust. And again, let's say I have 6 offers on one of my listings. And let's say that the best offers from an agent I've never heard of, I've never spoken to. This agent never communicated with me whatsoever during the week the property was up for sale. And this agent simply emailed an offer and said, see attached. This agent does not have a deposit check. The second highest offer is from an agent I know, an agent I've done multiple deals with, an agent I've worked with before, an agent that does have a deposit check. Wouldn't it be in my best interests, because of my seller's best interests, to extend the olive branch to that agent with the second highest offer and say, hey, you're not the highest. Would you be able to improve and we can get a deal done? Now, the counter argument there is, David, I don't like that and that's cheating or that's not fair. Guys, give me a break. I'm working for the seller and it's not just about the price. It's about getting the deal done, ensuring that the buyer is legit, ensuring the buyer can close. That is the relationship that exists between me and this fictitious agent with whom I've worked many different times. Your uncle, who has his real estate license and works out in Niagara Falls and does 0.5 deals a year, doesn't have that relationship. And again, this isn't just agents being friends with other agents. This is, as I've said, ensuring that the deal closes and working in the best interests of the client. So this is the intangible, and it's so hard to really convey, and hopefully I've done that. But who are you as a listing agent? How do you communicate with your colleagues? How do you talk to your colleagues? Are you sending out that mass email? That billboard agent from Ronsi's, like that was an absolute joke. Had that agent done it differently, that agent would have made more friends, proverbially, that night and gotten a better price. And in a down market where you don't have the 30 offers, it's the difference between that property selling and that property not. So the last point I would make is something that I just want to call the attention to detail. We got photos of a listing and there was a Christmas tree on the front lawn. Unacceptable. We'll have our photographer Photoshop that out. Do we have the contacts to do it? Do they have the ability and the timing? Will they rush it? Will they do it for us? If there's an extra fee, are we going to say no? Of course not. I cannot tell you how often there are little things where it's $100 for this, $400 for that, $200. Just do it. Just do it. It's the right way to do it. And here's the thing. I wrote this down at the break. First, you have to know to do it. A lot of agents don't know to do it. They don't think it's a problem. And you can imagine the agent taking a photo of her computer screen and putting those photos up. They don't know to do it. Then you've got to know how to do it or who is going to do it. And then simply you've got to want to do it. Now, that's the problem, is that many just don't want to do it. Now, we have those that don't know to do it, and those that if they knew to do it, they don't know who to do it or how to do it. But it's the ones that don't want to do it that really get me. Because, listen, anyone can go and look. You could be the worst agent. You can go and look and you can see someone else's listing on MLS. And maybe you don't know how to do that. You could learn. Maybe you don't know that you're supposed to, but it's not going to take long for you to realize that you should. Do you want to do it? And I go back to the Simon Sinek book and finding your why. And I look back and maybe I do it because I'm just an absolute psycho that's obsessed with doing things right? I have OCPD. I have to do everything perfectly. And I can't go play 9 holes of golf because you're supposed to play 18. Why are these people drinking alcohol at this company golf tournament? We need to score high. Yeah, that book really made an impact on me. It actually justified my entire existence by looking back at my childhood and my teenage years and saying, okay, I get it. I understand myself. But it comes out in what we do. And there's a lot of agents that look at the industry like this and they understand it. And then there's just a lot that don't. So one more example, if you will. We have a condo listing and our photographer went there and took all the photos. Now, again, we got the tenant out, we cleaned it, we painted it, we staged it, amazing photos. We've got our social media and we've got our virtual tour and we've got our Matterport. But there was no fob in the lockbox. There's no amenities photos. Okay, no problem. We're just selling the property, right? No, it is a problem because it's not perfect. So we pushed the listing back one day. We paid the photographer an extra fee because we take care of people, right? You're going back. It's my fault there wasn't a fob in the lockbox. Pay him extra, go back, another $150. Thank you. Now we have amenities photos of the unbelievable amenities in this building because it's part and parcel of what's going to sell it. Now, again, I go back to, do you know that you need to do that? Do you know how and who? And then do you want to? So far be it for me to say, guys, there are a lot of properties in the city of Toronto. In fact, I might say most, that are not listed effectively. They are not listed correctly. And that is the reason why some properties sell and some properties don't. Now, I would conclude with this. We asked this question. I believe our topic was, what does it say about the market? It says that buyers buy with emotion, and you don't want to think that's you. You do not want to think that's you. But guys, come on. Any product or service you're buying with emotion. I don't care what it is, you're buying with emotion. And I'll go back to that Simon Sinek book and say, as an example, I like running. And I've hurt myself, unfortunately, a couple of times. Let's say that there's a shoe and it's a Nike, and I look and I see a swoosh. I know Nike. They're basically the most famous clothing and sporting goods manufacturer in the history of the planet. Now, what's in that ad? Let's say that there's New Balance or Asics or something that I wouldn't equate that with Nike, but let's say that their message speaks to the 44-year-old recreational runner who's afraid of hurting himself but wants to train for a half marathon. I'm going to buy that shoe. Maybe that makes me weak. I'm buying with emotion. Or you go back to the Simon Sinek book and finding your why. Maybe that's why they make shoes. And maybe that's how they convey that message to me. And maybe that's marketing at work, and maybe that's the emotion. Real estate is bought and sold with emotion. Real estate has no fixed value. Again, you've got a house that's worth $1 million, no problem. This agent over here is going to get you $1.15 million because they're doing it a certain way. And this agent is going to get you $950,000 because they're doing it a different way. That is why some properties sell, and that is why other properties don't. The proverbial sign in the lawn, the listing on MLS, it's not it. You want to think that you're not going to pay more for unit 1201 than 1101 because of how it's listed. But maybe you don't want to admit to yourself that whether you're on social media or watching TV or seeing ads or having the waiter at the restaurant say nice things, we're all buying and consuming with emotion. And last but not least, AI is not taking over, because that deal I did last night, that was based on a relationship that started on a baseball diamond almost 20 years ago. So folks, that is it for this week. I hope you enjoyed. I feel like I really plugged that app that I have on my phone and the book by Simon Sinek, but it is fun. I absolutely love listening to these blinks, and I think, as I told my team, sure, why not? You should do it. Instead of listening to music while you're running, listen to the app. I think it's cool. I feel better for doing that. Last night's was about living to 180. That's an interesting concept. Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you're on YouTube or for listening wherever you get your podcasts, please remember to like, comment, or subscribe. Drop me a message on YouTube. I read them all. And thank you once again today for joining us here on the Last Honest Realtor.